Hey, what's up guys? It's pewpew here. It's been a little while since I uploaded a video. I decided to give myself a little break from Albion. I was getting really burned out from playing the same game all day, every day, so I took a little break from it. I just started streaming again, I'll say about, less than a week ago, and almost as soon as I started streaming again, SBI decided to drop this big patch that really reworked a lot of things and really like changed corrupted dungeons. And of course, every time a big patch like this drops, a lot of people come to my channel and ask me a bunch of questions, and I'm gonna try to answer some of these questions about the new patch in this video. So first, we're gonna talk about some of these weapon balancing changes, especially the sword and axe changes. Swords have their latest Q nerf reverted. In other words, they buffed it back to what it was before the nerf. So instead of giving you 9% movement speed before this patch, it's now getting 12% movement speed per Q stack, right? So up to 36%. And also their W hamstring got reworked, and this new hamstring, I'm liking it a lot. What it does is you can still use it like before. You can just walk up to someone, hit them, do a little damage, and you slow their movement speed by 25%. And if you have a Q stack active, now after the rework, if you have a Q stack active when you use the first part of the hamstring, you'll be able to use hamstring a second time, and the second time is actually a 7-meter leap, right? So yes, swords get 2 leaps now on top of their 36% movement speed. And also the hamstrings, the new hamstrings damage is pretty significant. If you hit both parts of it, it would do as much damage as a splitting slash, and it's 5-second shorter cooldown than a splitting slash. So keep that in mind as well. Now, the new hamstring ability is a little buggy right now. Sometimes the part 1 of the skill will just not cast, like your character will go through the cast animation, but the skill won't go on cooldown and you have to use it again. And sometimes the part 2 of the ability will not hit targets inside the hitbox. But, you know, that's something that's been happening with other similar skills as well, like Quarterstaff E, for example. Sometimes you jump up in the air and slam down and just not hit someone that's like clearly inside your circle, and that's happening with the hamstring part 2 as well. So hopefully this gets fixed in the future, but as it is right now, I think like it's a pretty cool skill. It's just buggy. Also, and this is not a bug but more like a exploitable mechanic with hamstring, is you can use part 2 of hamstring without consuming a stack if you currently don't have a Q stack. The way that works is when you activate part 1 of hamstring, if you currently have a Q stack on you, it lets you get access to part 2 of hamstring, and then when you actually use part 2 of hamstring, it's gonna remove 1 Q stack from you and let you actually like use the skill. But once you get access to part 2 of hamstring, if you lose all of your Q stacks, you can still use part 2 of hamstring, right? So what this means is 2 things. Number 1, if you get purged, let's say by a spear, for example, if they cripple your stacks off, right? As long as you have already hit part 1 of hamstring, even if they cripple your stacks off, you can still use part 2 of hamstring with 0 stacks on you. Also, you can pull off a like quick little burst combo. What you do is you stack to 3 stacks, and then you hit part 1, so W, and then you can E to consume your stacks, and then you hit W again with 0 stacks, right? So stacks of 3, and then W, E, W, and you get a nice little burst of damage, and you don't have to like waste the Q stack for your W that way. And then like you can, you know, WEW and then you Q again, and with that last Q you get to keep the charge for your auto attacks or your movement speed. In the E slot, the swords got 2 changes. Number 1, the dual source E got a 5-second cooldown reduction buff. So instead of 20 seconds cooldown on your E, you now have 15 seconds on the dual sword E. and also the leap is offset now by 3 meters. So what that means is when you leap to do your damage, when you use your E to do your damage, the damage will land where the circle is, right? It's gonna hit the whole circle, but your character will leap and fall to like the closer edge of your circle instead of like right in the center of your circle. And practically speaking, what this means is your leap is now shorter than before if you're using it for escape, but when you're using it to do damage, it's harder for people to interrupt your skill. So for example, in the older version of the dual swords, if your enemy has a firewall or if he has a bob helmet, then when you leap right on top of them, they can hit you with one of these force movement skills, and they will cancel your E, and you're not going to be able to do damage, and you're going to get CC'd. But with the new version of the E, because you're landing a little bit short of your target, then these like really close ranged CC skills are going to have a harder time hitting you, and you'll be able to actually land your damage on them. And then finally, we have the Clearing Blade E rework, which is a skill that I wanted to see reworked for a long time because it used to be just a weaker version of Gallatin Pairs. It didn't really have anything like unique to it. It was just 3 stacks, 2 damage, but it never did the same amount of damage as the other swords, so it was kind of useless. But now, it's a pretty interesting skill. What it does now is when you activate it, it throws out a projectile at a pretty long range and a fairly wide hitbox as well. So it's kind of like a magic arrow on the Warble in terms of like projectile speed and range, but it's got a wider hitbox, and it does a completely different thing depending on how many stacks you have. So at 0 stacks, it just does a little damage. Well, I say a little, it's actually a pretty good chunk of damage for a 0 stack skill at that range. It really is kind of like a magic arrow from a Warble when you use it at a 0 stack. But at 1 stack, it slows your target as well, and at 2 stacks, it loses the slow but silences your target, and at 3 stacks, it loses the silence, but it does a little extra damage to your target. Now, the extra damage at 3 stacks is not like a massive amount of extra damage. It's not like a claymore or dual sword where the 3 stack is really just like way more damage than 0 stacks. It just does a little bit more damage. Okay, so what that means is now you, instead of just like stacking to 3 and then throwing it out for damage, you kind of have to think about, do I want to use it at 1 stack for the slow? Do I want to use it at 2 stacks for the silence? Or do I want to just like use it for a little more damage at 3 stacks? And with the rework on W, to like consume 1 charge with your W skill, you can kind of control how many stacks you want to use your E at, right? Because you can lose 1 stack. So let's say you want the silence, but you have 3 stacks. Well, you can lose 1 stack with your W and then still get the silence. You can also use it with Iron Whale, so you can like gain a stack for the effect that you want. So like if you have 0 stacks right now, you can hit Iron Whale and then throw it out and you get a slow on people, right? And the way I've been using this weapon in corrupted dungeons was I've been playing it kind of like a Warble with Iron Whale, and I would just use Iron Whale to run away and then get 1 charge and hit the person with the 1 charge slow, so I can kite them, and then when they're soft, like when they have less HP than I do, I can go in there and just like play like a normal sword. Now, I gotta say, I don't think the Clearing Blade is like a S-tier weapon now or anything like that, but with the flexibility now and the range on the E, I feel like it's a weapon that you can kind of like mess around with in corrupted dungeons, but I think it's something that you'll probably see some use of in like group PvP. Alright, so now we're gonna talk about the axe changes. The Axe Q3 got a little quality of life buff. They removed a lot of stand time on that skill, so it's a lot smoother now to use that skill, and I would say it probably makes it like the best Q skill for axes now. In the W slot, Adrenaline Rush got buffed a little bit. They extended the window for you to hit someone to like extend that ability. So before the change, you had 2.5 seconds to hit someone otherwise your adrenaline rush will end, right? Now you have 3.5 seconds to do it. And then I think this is the biggest change, is the battle rush skill on Axis is now a ground target ability. It no longer requires you to like target someone to use it. So what that means is basically Bear Paws has all of their mobility back with the new W. They can E in to hit you, do damage, and then if they need to run, they can W out to run. Or if they, let's say they do that a couple times, they E you and then they W out to run, and then they E you again, right? Rinse and repeat. And if they build up a HP lead on you that way, then they can chase you down with a new Battle Rush ability. Now, Bear Paws, the traditional way to play Bear Paws is double Mercenary Jacket, right? And I think you could probably still do that with the current state of Bear Paws, even though there's a healing reduction debuff on you now for corrupted dungeons. So Mercenary Jacket will heal less, but if you're using it with Battle Rush, then the healing buff on the Battle Rush will kind of cancel out, at least partially cancel out that nerf. So you'll still be able to heal for quite a chunk with Battle Rush and Mercenary Jacket. Now, in some matchups where you need to brawl more, then you probably still want to use Adrenaline Rush, because if you use Battle Rush, you lose a lot of damage. But if you're like, say you're chasing down a Warbow or something, then the new Battle Rush will definitely do the job better. And then finally, the Inferno Scythe also got a new E. So before the change, the Inferno Scythe used to hit you twice with their E. The first hit will do damage, the second hit will do damage and put a bleed on you. Now with the new reworked E, the first hit will do damage, the second hit will do execute damage to targets that are below 40% health. So it's kind of like a bloodletter. But realistically though, I don't think this weapon will ever get used in corrupted dungeons. You know, there's just no reason to use it over the Bear Paws. The Bear Paws just have more damage output with a cooldown reduction on the E, and also the leap on the E. Mobility wins 1v1s, right? And that brings us to the general corrupted dungeon changes, the so-called anti-kiting changes. So we have a new type of mobs now called the corrupted methods, but everybody's just been calling them the new bats because that's what they look like. They're a bunch of little bats, and what they do is they will tackle you and kill themselves in the process, and they will put a stack on you that give you a 1% max HP debuff with every stack, and past 5 stacks, they will also slow you by 1% for every stack, and it stacks up to 25 times. So in other words, if you keep running around in circles, you'll get tagged by these little bats over and over again, and eventually you'll get a 20% slow and a 25% max health debuff if you are just kiting and resetting the whole time. Now this is a change that a lot of people have been waiting for. They're just tired of seeing, or not seeing, but like having to chase after all these like high mobility reset builds, especially like Tomb Hammers or One Hand Mace that are like high mobility and high CC, right? So builds like that are really like pretty much impossible to chase down and kill if they play it right, of course. Tomb Hammers can die to Claymores if they play wrong, but if they're cautious and they play everything right, it's pretty much impossible to kill one of those players. Now, every time I say something like that, every time I say, oh, this build is basically impossible to kill, somebody is going to be like, look, I just killed a Tomb Hammer with a Claymore. Okay, cool, good for you, but truth is, that Tomb Hammer that you just killed, he played it wrong. Okay? If you do everything right on a Tomb Hammer or on a Avalonian Quarterstaff, you're not gonna die in corrupted dungeons. If you don't believe me, look on the ladder board. The top players that are using these builds, these high mobility and high CC builds, not only are they going into corrupted dungeons with 8.3 gear, knowing they won't die, they're going in there riding battle mounts to carry their loot because they know nobody's gonna kill them. They're not gonna lose their battle mounts. They're immortal. Now, before this patch got dropped, I think a lot of people were looking forward to this patch and like praying that the new bats will destroy the reset meta. But it didn't, and thank God it didn't actually. But we'll get into that in a bit. As it is right now, people are still playing the same builds as before, right? We're still seeing Tomb Hammers, Quarterstaffs, Avalonian Quarterstaffs, One Hand Maze, that kind of build at the top of the ladder board. And the players that are using these builds are still going in with 8.3s, they're still going in with battle mounts, they are still not dying. Right? And the reason for that is, well, there's a few reasons. Well, first, these bats will attack anybody that comes in range, right? So if you play smartly, you can actually make your opponent tank some of these bats for you, so they will get max HP debuff, they will get the slow debuff, and you will get some of that on you too. But if you're both getting debuffed, then you'll still be able to reset. You'll still be able to kite. And also, the way a lot of these kiting builds work is they have so much CC and mobility in there that even if you were to be slowed by 20%, which is at the max stacks basically, you'll still be faster. You'll still be faster than somebody that's playing, let's say, a one-hand curse, right? Because they have zero mobility, and you still have, yeah, you're getting slow, but you still have some mobility, so you'll still be faster and you'll still be able to reset. And I've been watching other streamers play, and I've seen Tomb Hammers getting over 20 stacks and still resetting and still winning the game. Now, I will say that this new mechanic kind of added a layer of complexity to playing kiting builds, because now you have to think about where these bats are spawning, because even if you can still reset with the corruption stacks on you, you don't really want to take these stacks for no reason, right? So you have to think about where they're spawning, can you avoid it, or can you make your enemy tank these stacks for you? And I actually have a clip here that is on screen right now. You see I'm playing a troll build. I'm messing around with a bedrock maze, and I ended up killing this one-hand axe player with like more than a dozen stacks on me, and he barely has any stacks on him, and I am still kiting him, and I still managed to cheese him by throwing him onto mobs. Alright, so bottom line is the new bats did add some complexity to playing kiting builds, because you had to think about where the bat's spawning, and you have to think about whether if you have to take the stack or if you can make your enemy take it for you, right? So it did add some complexity to playing kiting builds, but at the end of the day, the kiting builds are still winning. They are still the top meta. And really, I don't think this is something that's going to change in the near future. Because high-level corrupted dungeons are played, the way they're played is just everybody's playing to stay alive, right? They're playing to stay alive more than they're playing to kill you, right? Because they don't want to lose their 8.3s, they don't want to lose the loot they're carrying, which is probably like millions of silver, and they don't want to lose their infamy when they die, right? So, like, if they can play safe, they will play safe, and if the reset meta is really just gonna be like destroyed, like you can't reset anymore or something, then they'll just be playing to break crystals, right? So that's gonna be another kind of cancer if you like really destroy the reset meta. Since the release of the new patch, a lot of people have been coming into my chat and just dropping their opinions about the new patch. A lot of them are really disappointed. They're really hating the new patch because they thought this patch was gonna destroy all the Tomb Hammers and Quarterstaffs that are just like immortal and resetting forever, and it didn't. And if you are one of those people though, I want you to think about what would happen to corrupted dungeons if you actually got what you wanted. If you actually added a mechanic in corrupted dungeons where like people have to fight each other, let's say if you add a ring of fire, right? A lot of people have been saying that. Why don't you add the ring of fire to corrupted dungeons the same way you did to 2v2 Hellgates? Well, if you do that in corrupted dungeons, then you're gonna have these turret builds that are just gonna stand completely still and hit each other and see who can make the bigger number, right? You're gonna see curse, you're gonna see Trinity Spear, all these like roll your face on the keyboard and do damage kind of builds just running over corrupted dungeons. And that's something that I personally don't want to see, because I think builds like that takes no brain to use, right? And as much as I hate playing against tomb hammers and quarterstaffs and all those, you have to understand that these builds, as annoying as they are, they do take more brain capacity to run properly than, let's say, a curse, a one-hand curse, right? Because with these builds, you are low damage, and you have to know your matchups, you have to know your enemy's cooldowns to know when you can push them and when you have to run from them. If you're playing too safely and you're just running every time you take a little damage, you'll never get a kill. And if you're playing too risky and you're over pushing, then you will die a lot, right? So like these builds, like yes, they're annoying, but they do take some brain capacity to run. And if you force these builds out of corrupted dungeons by some kind of like anti-reset mechanic, then you're just gonna have a very brain-dead corrupted dungeons where everybody stands still and make big numbers appear. Now, with the new patch, I do think that corrupted dungeons at least is moving in the right direction, because I think it's making corrupted dungeons more complex. It's like raising the skill ceiling, if you will. It's making people think where the bats are spawning. Can I take the next stack? Can I tank this stack? Can I make my enemy tank it for me? Right, all those things. And it's not completely killing off the kiting playstyle. It's just raising the skill ceiling on it. Now, that said, I do think that there's some room for improvement with these new bats. First, I don't think the 20% is enough. Like right now it's stacking up to 25 stacks, and I think that's not really enough. I think the max stacks should be way higher, because we are seeing like tomb hammer builds with more than 20 stacks on them and still kiting and still resetting. I think if this patch is meant to like prevent people from having 8-hour long reset fights, then the max stacks has to be higher, right? So the more you run, the more it punishes you. I don't really think that the intensity of the stacks has to go up faster. Like some people are saying like 1% per stack is not enough, maybe 5%. I don't think you need to do that, because the idea of these bats is supposed to like prevent a fight from going on for 2 hours. It's not supposed to insta-kill a kiting build, right? So if you make the intensity too strong, or intensity per stack too strong, then it's gonna like straight up kill the kiting builds and make them unplayable, and that's not the goal. The goal is to limit how long they can keep resetting for, right? So if you were to say let's go up to 2% per stack, okay, maybe, but like 5% is way too much, right? And I do think they should raise the cap so that if you do just keep running forever, then it will stack up to like a massive amount and like really just kill you. And the other issue that I have with this mechanic is the spawn mechanic is really messed up, I think. The way it is right now is the bats will spawn 180 seconds after you enter the dungeon if it's Slayer, or 300 seconds after you enter the dungeon if it's Stalker or Hunter, under the condition that one of the players have taken some damage from the other player, right? So What this means is right now you can actually just sit in a corner of the map and hide for 3 minutes, and once the 3 minutes is up, you can go to a crystal, pre-stack your broadsword, and the moment that you enter combat with the other guy, the bats will insta-spawn, and it's gonna start preventing them from running, right? So let's say for example you are running a broadsword, you have high chase ability, right, with your dashes, your 10-second cooldown on your E, and with the new cripple, right? So if you're playing a weapon like a broadsword and you get that 3-stack cheese at the start, then the other guy can't just say, oh shit, I got cheese, let me go reset and I'll have a second chance, right? If the bats are gonna insta spawn, especially if we're gonna like increase the intensity of the bats, like a lot of people have been wanting, then that kind of strategy I think will just be really unfair. They'll cheese you at the start and it'll be impossible for you to get a reset and try again, right? So I think the bats should only spawn a few minutes after the initial engage, right? So after the two players have seen each other's builds and after the cheese have failed, basically. Now, there is one more corrupted dungeon change that frustrated me to no end. Is they got rid of the pre-clearing mechanic on corrupted dungeons. What I mean by that is, how we used to clear the dungeon first until just before the boss spawns, and then we go click the shrine so we can always get invaded and never go invading someone else, right? That way we were able to avoid rats. That way we were able to avoid having to play against tomb hammers on a dungeon that's not being cleared at all, so they can just keep tossing you into mobs over and over again. Well, they got rid of that mechanic, so now we have to play against rats, and now we have to play against tomb hammers on a full dungeon. And I am very unhappy about that. But, I guess I understand why they made the change. If everybody was using that mechanic, then the PvE players will be able to just farm corrupted dungeons without being challenged, and I guess that would not be good for the economy, maybe, and it's definitely not how they designed the game, right? So I guess I understand why they did it, but I hate the fact that they did it. I hate having to chase rats, and I hate having to fight tomb hammers on the full dungeon, but we all gotta deal with that now. So thanks, SBI. Alright, so that's all I gotta say about this patch, and there are other changes in the patch. There are other like weapon balancing changes, other general game changes, like Fire Staff got a new Q, Dagger Q and Chain Slash got tweaked. I don't think any of these other changes really affected corrupted dungeons all that much, so I'm not gonna talk about them. But if you want to read up on what happened in the last patch that I didn't cover, I'm going to put the link to the patch notes in the description below so you can keep yourself updated and not get left behind by all the changes that they're making. Alright, so as always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video.